About 3 years ago, before my time here at Appleby, I was sat at the back of this chapel listening to my sister's chapel speech. I remember being astonished, seeing my big sister grown up, talking about her time here at Appleby and how it made her into the person that she was back then. It was back then when I decided that I wanted to do a chapel speech too. But when it came time to submit a topic, 250 words, I was lost. In the long 3 years that I had to think of a topic, I hadn't had one aha moment about what I would like to talk to you today. Lost, I went to my mom in search of that moment. Like always, she had a whole list of ideas ready and eager to share with me. She proposed ideas about gratitude, visualization, actualization, and even humility, because I wanted to come up here today and talk to you about how humble I am. While all of these had the potential to be wonderful speeches, I hadn't really found the topic that was the essence of me. My mom then asked me, okay then, what is the essence of you? Of course, my initial response to this was, how am I supposed to know? It's a big question to ask. Plato even once said, the most important thing to know in this world is yourself. And herein lies the question, how am I supposed to know? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Athena Warren. I have 3 siblings, 1 older sister named Avery, who I've already talked about, and my 2 younger brothers, JK and Jacob. Growing up out of the 4 of us, I was always known as the quiet one. My shyer personality was always overpowered by loud and extroverted siblings. I found that I was always praised for this from my family and my parents. I was always called the listener. After a while, I got very used to this title, and it became the status quo. Whenever my parents asked how my day went, or if I ever saw my extended family, I was always the same happy, quiet, and perceptive Athena. Growing up, it was my mom, my older sister, my 2 younger brothers, and I. My mom called us the Fab Five, and my sister was deemed mom number 2. And let me tell you, my mom and my sister could take care of business. In this time, my mom headed back to school to pursue her master's and her passion for teaching, and luckily she landed a job right after graduation. As for my sister, through the handful of babysitters, she kept my little brothers and I in absolute check. During this time of transition, my idea of keeping my emotions and my thoughts to myself was emphasized very strongly. I felt that I should not be a burden to my family, as they were all already busy enough. In middle school, I found myself overcompensating in my academics. I felt that by getting good grades, I would be even less of a worry for my mom, and that as a teacher, getting good grades would make her happy. In addition to that, the start of middle school for me is when my sister was starting her first year here at Appleby. It was a school that I quickly fell in love with, and I wanted to attend for high school. So, from grades 6 to 8, my personal standards changed greatly. Anything below an 85 to me was near failure, and all of my learning skills just had to be E's. I made it a habit of mine to meet these standards, and this habit quickly gave me the new title of the smart and quiet sibling, which made me even more popular with the extended family. While my strong report cards led to praise from my family, my high academic standards led to a great sense of anxiety when it came to anything mark-related in school. When teachers would hand back tests, report cards would be coming out, or anything virtually related to marks was happening, I would find myself stressing out like crazy. Eventually, I learned to cope with this stress, as it became the norm in my life. It was a practice of mine to keep this to myself. I developed a strong and unhealthy habit of dealing with stress. To make things worse, I tried at all costs to avoid talking to my parents about this stress, as I strongly believed that the best way to figure out my problems was on my own. Looking back now, I realized that I was practicing getting stressed out. But moving into high school, especially here at Appleby, it became increasingly more difficult to manage my own stress. One example of this was back in 10th grade. It was my first year here at Appleby, and I was so nervous. The first few months, I was still finding my way socially, so I relied heavily on my academics to boost my confidence. In early November, I had a very busy week ahead of me. One of the major projects due for me was a physics lab, which I was working very hard at the night before it was due. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I was putting my final document into my A tab when my whole laptop had crashed. If this has happened to you, I feel you. I frantically restarted my computer, begging that the lab had been saved, but everything was gone. I was absolutely distraught and overwhelmed. Not knowing where else to go, I went to my mom and I explained all the stress that I was feeling and how worried I was about everything at my new school. To make me feel better, she took me out for McDonald's ice cream, and we talked it out. She reminded me how important it was for not to be kind to myself and to keep things in perspective and accept the fact that everything I do is a learning experience, including when a laptop crashes. She convinced me that I knew my stuff and that I could recreate the lab, and I did just that. She said it was important to develop a practice where I approach all situations with the lens of, what am I learning here? As I moved through the rest of my time here at Appleby, I always remembered what she had said to me that night. Throughout grade 10, I truly did realize how hard I was pushing myself. It was one of the first things that I learned about myself here at Appleby. I began to recognize that I had a habit of pushing myself to my limits. But it was only then when I recognized this issue that I was able to start overcoming it. Being in senior school, it has been a time of reflection for many of us, especially us senior twos. We think about the good, the bad, and what the future holds for us. But during this time, I think back to what I've learned. I'm reminded of how they've made me into who I am today and will further encourage me to excel into my future. I think of my AP research class, where this year my topic of focus is on positive education. A portion of this topic looks at the value of learning over the quantitative results of a grade. From my time here at Appleby, I've slowly learned to apply this practice to my own life. By viewing schoolwork as a continuing learning process, I found that my school-related stress is much more manageable. When I receive a poor mark on a test or an assignment now, I am always asking myself, where's the learning, not where did I go wrong? By beginning to apply this to my own life, I found that I've significantly reduced my school stress. Ironically, the biggest and what should be the most stressful project of my graduating year has taught me the importance of how to approach, manage, and embrace academic stress for the purpose of learning. When I think of the last few years, I'm also reminded of my time on the varsity swim team. I'm reminded how I grew a passion for the sport and how I truly learned and understood my desire to achieve my goals through hard work and dedication. But my time on this team has also helped me learn when to reach my limits, when to take the time to step back and focus on my health. With this being my senior year on the team, I had set very high expectations for myself and what I wanted to achieve throughout the season. It was clear to me that practice was the main way to achieve my goal, but not everything had gone to plan this season. This past January, I'd come down with a very bad flu, and it pulled me out of swimming for 2 weeks. After the first week of my sickness, I had felt as if I have already missed enough practice, and as if it was an expectation for me to get back in the next week. Even though I hadn't fully recovered from my sickness, I headed to the pool the next Monday. And after getting the pool that day, I found myself waking up even more sick the next morning. The reoccurrence of my sickness forced me to stop. It showed me that I was pushing myself beyond my limits once again. I had to stop my old habits from creeping back in. Dealing with a hectic school life is something that all of us Appleby students can relate to. It sometimes can feel like stress is just waiting around the corner for us. Even this week, I found myself looking at my calendar with 2 assignments, 1 research paper to finish, and a chapel speech to write. This seemed like the most challenging week of my Appleby career. Even though I had planned ahead, worked all of last weekend and last week to prepare, I still found myself yet again in my mom's car with ice cream, this time with chicken nuggets too. For my fellow S2s, I know that you are most likely in a similar situation that I'm in. With waiting for university decisions and the added stress of maintaining an average, it can be tough. It is tough. S1s, this year may very well be the most challenging of all of high school, and you're in the middle of it. It's an uphill climb of managing leadership, academics, and co-curriculars. Even for my friends who will be performing in the play later tonight. No matter what it is, there's always something around the corner for us. But how do you deal with this? What strategies have you learned to meet these expectations? And what habits have you developed during your time here? The next time you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, I want you to think about each task ahead as individual obstacles, opportunities that you have yet to overcome. Practice using that stress as a fuel and to push through and do the best that you can. But also, don't be afraid to recognize and speak up for yourself when it just seems to be too much. High school is a time of trial and error for all of us. It is now when we begin to recognize our abilities and to test our limits. Being able to make a habit of recognizing where to push and where to submit will be the key to guiding through stresses, such as here at Appleby, university, and even later on in our lives. William James once said that the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. So what thought will you choose? What practices have you created and will continue to follow in order to navigate your time here through high school? When I started this speech, I asked myself, who am I and what is the essence of me? Well, I'm still learning, and most likely the same applies to all of you. But by navigating through these experiences and practicing the way that we react to situations, we can all understand our limits and our abilities better in order to realize our full potential. Now will you please rise and sing hymn 656?